Greetings and welcome back to Homebrew. Today we're going to be looking at the recap of our Call of the Hunger Session 3, as well as preparing for our Session 4. Now, our players last time we saw were heading from Lemoore to the Woodlands, and basically if you look at this map here, Lemoore is here and each square is about 1 day's worth of travel, given that they're on well-paved roads, all that sort of thing. So, the whole session basically took place on them getting from Lemoore to this dotted line, which is the boundary of the Woodlands. What we had prepared for that session was a little bit more than that, but that's okay. Now, I think that the session ran a little bit slow, specifically because our characters were interested in getting to somewhere to stay for the night right out the gates, and we originally had planned this kind of this scene where Emery is body snatched by her brother, and I think that in the efforts of including some stuff going on with the other players, what it really just kind of bogged down into a scene where Emery was kind of coming back and forth, and then we're exposing on Oliver with the other crewmates. I think that went really well. But as you can see by the end of that session, we were just getting on the fringe of getting into a structured combat where they were going to investigate this scene coming up, which we'll talk about here in a moment. Now, we also had some technical difficulties at the beginning, which meant that we didn't have enough time to get into that structured combat. So we had a whole session without structured combat, which is okay, especially since this is the beginning. It's probably one of the least climactic times in the campaign, right? Because characters don't have a lot of side quests to be thinking on. Some of the players are still kind of new at the aspect of really getting into character and appreciating those lore moments, or those moments when it's not just combat. So we also had some opportunity for the characters to be murder hobos and go after the farmers, which we had prepared for, but luckily those characters didn't do that. So moving off of that, they went to that commune with the Buckums, and they got a little bit of information there. I think that we could have done a little bit better with Duke the Woodward, seeing as he was supposed to be more of an expert of interacting with the Tekeknu, which is the bug people, and the Dryads, or the Timbermen, right, which is kind of the undead ents of Carnation. And instead, we kind of made them a little bit more into someone who had been interacting with the Aesoalun, which are interacting with the Woodland, who are basically the Wood Elves of that Fringewood area too. So a little bit of a misplay on our part as a GM, but that's plenty okay. We still got the story moving along in a direction that I think is going to work out pretty well. Moving off of there, we got a little bit of a time on the same day that they traveled into the woods finally. We used some of our ideas about hearing some background stuff as the Woodland tracked them, and our players did really well in being able to hear it and call them out. So we were able to scramble, and even though in our notes we had things happening in a different order that day, we ended up having a little bit more story. Also a reason why we didn't get into the structured encounter that we had set up for kind of my version of a random encounter in those areas. So where that leaves us is that our characters are on the verge of their first night sleeping in the woods, which is pretty cool, because what that means is that we get to start using our Call of the Hunger mechanic, where they all test for willpower, and if any of them fail, they start getting attributes. Now, on our attribute tree, the very first ones that we're going to have, which the whole purpose of this particular type of tree is that we're going to give them some sort of trait and not give them any reason to know as a player why their characters are starting to exhibit these traits, right? We start them off as a faint nuisance, and then if they keep failing, they become concerning, threatening, violent, and lost. So that's going to be driving them into wondering about how this all ties together, and it's going to be a nice little toe into the mystery that is what's going on in the Woodlands. So maybe we'll get to see a character fail right out the gates. They really only so they have to check every single long rest. So hopefully they don't start failing right out the gates, because it's going to get harder and harder the more they fail, right? So that'll be a fun mechanic to get to play with. Also, right in the start of our next session, we're going to have that structured encounter where they encounter those undead. I decided to add a little component where the undead are only so the undead character that they're going to fight is only awake at night. So it's a little bit of a puzzle. They have to figure out if they choose to want to go during the day. That's not going to be an issue, and they're going to have to try to figure out what to do with it there, right? Which is just a way for us to mop up time. And the more time we mop up, the more likely we are to trigger Emery's side quest penalty, which is, for us, it's just a way to add tension. And it's also going to have them do more long rests without getting anywhere in the campaign, right? So it's going to build up suspense. So we have them dealing with that, and then it's another day's ride to talk to, basically to report in with the head of the Deermen, or the Wood Elves, as you guys are probably a little more familiar. The head of the Wood Elves in the particular area that they're going to be on the map, which again is this kind of brown area. So Watandulast is his name. He controls this area. He's got some a bit of a turf war going on with the other Wood Elves in this area. And so what we're going to say is, because he's been kind of protecting the Bug People and the Dryads, who have been kind of, this whole brown area used to be just the size of this small cave here. It's been getting bigger and bigger, and that's what's pissing off the other elves. He's going to say basically, hey, either you guys start listening to me and I'm in charge of you, or I'm just going to give you over to the other Wood Elves, who are going to beat the snot out of you and push you back into being a small little hole, right? So that's what's going to tip the players off. There's a war coming, and that's what we have in our notes right here. Is Watandulast is going to have this conversation. He's got a couple of those other lieutenants that we made, and they're off warning the heads of the Bug People, the Tekeknu, specifically the Queen, and the other one is off warning the Druids, or the keepers of the Dryads, that, hey, you guys need to pony up, right? And so that's really, that conversation is where I expect this next session to end. But we went ahead and went one step further. We know that the characters are going to be heading toward the Bracken Bastion, which just gives us a couple more days in order to get to there, because we know each of these squares is about 2 days, right? So with our math, we got about 3 days between the Bracken Bastion and this Watandulast conversation where he's camped out, which gives us enough time for our characters to encounter something unique about Carnation, which in this area, they've got like kind of like a vampiric wood or a bloodwood situation, where some of the plants will make meat-smelling fruits, which will attract carnivores, which will then create more of a undead cycle where they kill things and eat them and make corpses, and then the trees, being vampiric, will feed off of those. And so they've developed some special techniques. There's these things called memory trees, which are basically mimics, except when they're in the forest, in order to be able to attract things, they create that meat fruit, essentially, and then they trap and try to kill the whatever predator comes along. So we're going to have the characters run into a pair of trolls, and I just made up a small structured encounters to get the bloodlust of my players out, right? And what they can do is they'll fight these two trolls who are holding down a tree and picking the meat fruit off of it and eating it, kind of torturing this thing, right? And the thing is going to be changing the meat fruit into a repellent, so something that's really noxious, a gas or something like that, trying to get these trolls to go away. But the trolls are really resistant to that, right? We know trolls are kind of like poison resistant sort of type creatures in lore, so that it's not going to be working on them. But what it will make is a dynamic combat. So they're going to be sitting in mud and in a pile of noxious gas. So if the characters come across them, then they got two options: fight them or go around, right? And what we can do as a DM is this will make between the mud and the noxious gases fighting these guys, it'll make for a nice dynamic fight. And if they choose to escape and go around them, then these guys can hunt them when they go to sleep at night, right? So either way, we can get that feel that we want, or at least create some sort of tension. And that just kind of all depends on how the players are feeling, right? If they don't want to fight, we're not going to force a fight necessarily. But if they're feeling like it, then they've got something to, beat the HP out of, so to speak. So that'll get them to the Bracken Bastion. I don't think we need to plan that just yet. As far as when they meet G, we got to still figure out G's personality and what's going to go on with that. The players might want to go over and talk to the heads of the druids or the dryads, which would be, we've got a character kind of in mind from a previous campaign to kind of throw back into this. His name's Boolarau, and I think that'll be really fun to do. That being said, we still have some time to be able to think of that. Additionally, the characters might want to go and talk to the Tekeknu because they are already kind of name dropped with the death of Archek and being able to bring in the heads up from the gangsters and want more, maybe get some favor in town there. So we got a lot of different things going on that could really help out the players. Watandu last, one of the items that he's going to say is, well, I'm calling for a summit between me and these other groups. I was originally going to have him ask the players as a side quest or a quest to go and warn both of those groups and say, hey, meet me here. If you don't show up, you're against me rather than with me, right? But then I thought about it, and it's like, we had these other lieutenants. Why would he rely on some strangers for this? So instead what he's going to say is, hey, you guys are safe in my area for now, but remember that things are going to get nuts around here, and you better start thinking about what side you are on, right? And especially with Wallaby being part of the Aes Oelun, which is that group of essentially witchers who are out of the Bracken Bastion, their tentative role in the future of the Woodlands is going to get pretty serious, especially when the players get there and they realize the place is damn near empty because the hunger drove them out to go try to find and fight Profane. At least that's what they thought it was at the time. So we got a lot of things that we can do to plan out the session after this session, but that's what our next episode is for. So if you would like, listen and watch in on me on that one. We got a little bit of time between episodes coming up. Monday of this coming up week, or Tuesday, is our next session with the players, and then me and Sarah have a little bit of time off between sessions. So I hope to see you then, and if you have any questions, comments, put them in the comment section on the YouTube video, and I will get back to you. Thanks for joining.